OK, let's move on to the popcorns, shall we? Liz Truss gave the presentation yesterday.
God,
the marketing paraphernalia
the
is appearing everywhere. We've got the popcorn leaflets, the badge. I'm staying away from that stuff.
I knew how much you wanted this.
Oh, thank you, Alicia.
You had the badge, so...
Yes, if you've just joined us, not my badge, to be very clear, but it was in the studio.
Lucy, what is your take on the popcorns?
Yeah, so we saw Liz Truss come back to the fore, and then, you know, this is a former Prime Minister who lasted, 49 days in office?
And I think it's because it's a former Prime Minister, you have to pay attention, don't you? This is not just like another faction doing another policy launch or something. It is the former Prime Minister making her play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose it's interesting now that she seems to think that she has gone away and decides that she can come back and she's the right person to lead this type of group. And, you know, there was interesting figures that we saw, quite Marmite figures appearing. It was Jacob Rees-Mogg, we saw Lee Anderson as well. I think Lord Frost was seen in the audience too. And it was certainly a very sort of ideology-driven conversation that was had yesterday at PopCon, very anti-woke, anti-net zero. These kind of phrases were being thrown around, anti-immigration, and really buying into this sort of some of the cultural war arguments that we've seen in recent times become more and more popular amongst a certain group of Conservative voters.
Yeah, they're making very clear, they say, we are not here to sort of pose a leadership challenge to the Prime Minister. What, in essence, are they trying to do, and do you think they'll be able to do it?
I think they're trying to appeal to a group of voters that are probably becoming more and more attracted towards parties like Nigel Farage's Reform. You know, Nigel Farage was there yesterday, not in support of the
reporting
group himself.
Said,
yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. He made it very clear that he thought the Tory party was you know, becoming much less attractive for voters itself. But at the same time, there clearly are people that are just fed up with the direction that the Conservatives are going in just now under Rishi Sunak. They feel that it's a not very Conservative party anymore. And we have seen a lot of frustration, particularly in the last week, with smoking bans, vaping bans, types of policies that are being brought in that are not potentially what voters thought they would see in the sort of the final kind of election year of the Tory party.
Alicia, how much cold, hard calculation is there behind this positioning? Because the middle ground is where the votes are to be found in a general election. Rishi Sunak is very much in the middle ground when compared to the popcorns. What are they looking at in terms of saying how many votes they think they can win by making this approach? Because they, as Rosie said, they've made it very clear they're staying within the Tory party.
Well, they are looking at those towards the right of the Conservative Party who maybe have voted Conservative for a very long time and at the moment just feel like they aren't really getting what they were promised. So they're looking at those who, as a result of that, maybe have gone even further right with their views.
Reform Party.
And they're trying to just pick up those voters that maybe, as you were saying, have drifted towards reform, have drifted towards those kinds of parties, and they're trying to just really reel those voters back in and say, you know, this is the ideology that the Conservatives should be following. It's a bit more hardline, it's a bit tougher, and this is what real conservatism is.
I wonder if they could do Rishi Sunak a favour, because if they're then representing that wing of right-leaning voters, Rishi can get on with wooing the centre ground.
It's quite a weird time for them to decide to put forward this event, given that we are in this election year, given that the Conservative Party's already had to deal with a number of quite sort of open attempts at sort of infighting with the five families that we saw towards the end of last year. That's a phrase that's been thrown around. There's questions about whether PopCon will be the sixth family that's emerging. But certainly it's quite an interesting timing and choice for Liz Truss to emerge again and come back to the fore.
And Alicia, for the Prime Minister, how much of a problem is this? Within his own party, there's so much disagreement between MPs about what Conservative policy actually is.
Definitely, and there are so many of these factions within the Conservative Party already, so lots of people are just questioning what is really the difference with this one compared to, say, the New Conservatives. That's another faction within the Conservative Party with members, if I remember correctly, like Lee Anderson, who also seems to be in this faction, so I'm not really sure how that one adds up. But lots of those ideas seem to massively overlap. So lots of people are just saying, you know, what is the point in this? Is it just really creating noise rather than actually getting behind the leader before a general election? It is a headache for Rishi Sunak, though. Obviously, we heard, especially with that whole Rwanda Bill that we saw, these five families, the big factions within the party, were putting a lot of pressure on him. And pretty much every day it was making headlines. So it's not good optics for the Conservative Party whatsoever. And another one of these is a kick in the teeth for his authority.
Alicia, Lucy, thank you both so much. Alicia, maybe you come back with even more merchandise in the next hour across the day.
Got a T-shirt.
I'm going to ban it from the studio.